Hello, and welcome to the Sound Painters Studio. My name is Mathew. I'm a composer and cellist. I got my PhD in music composition, and now I'm on a mission to help other people bring their music to life in the best way possible. The Sound Painter Studio is a one-year virtual program for composers over 18 who are serious about taking their music to the next level to grow inside a supportive community. Imagine a studio that offers the following. The first thing is going to be an easy to follow compositional process that helps you to build your music in layers like a painting so that you never suffer from composer's block again and you're always inspired. That's the first thing that I'm going to help you with. You might be wondering, how is painting even a valuable way to think about composing? You would be surprised how much you can learn by studying the visual arts as a composer. So back in 2017, I did a portrait of my wife. One of the things that I learned was that with portrait paintings, one of the first steps is to just block in the subject with the most general values, the most general information. And so this image that you see here is that first initial step, and it takes minutes. This took me maybe less than 10 minutes to put together, probably even less than that. And so after that, you gradually layer in more and more information from the most general to the most specific. So you can see in this example, that's exactly what I was doing. And it starts to come to life. The more things that you add on, the more layers you sediment on top of each other, the more it starts to feel like the painting it's supposed to be. And that's how I started thinking about music. It was kind of mind-blowing, and there was this huge tectonic shift in the way that I thought about music from that point on. And so I started composing like that. I thought, is there a way that I could actually adopt this method in music? And so I started trying to think of ways to do that. And so I developed what I called the scroll method. And so I'm just going to show a little clip here of how that scroll actually looked. And you can't see too much detail in it, but one of the things that I did was I thought, well, let me see if I can take this idea of blocking the most general information and then gradually add layers of detail on top of it. And so I decided what the most general information was going to be, and then I blocked out the entire piece. The form was just at that point ready, and I can just layer in more and more detail. That was one problem that I felt that I was starting to address, because prior to that, I felt like I was constantly getting stuck. I felt like I always asked questions like, where do I even go from here? What is the next step? I don't know what to write next. What's the next measure? I would spend hours contemplating what I have to do, and I would just feel exhausted and lost, and it made me not want to compose. So it felt like that was something that I needed to address. And that's why I was painting. It was a way to deal with that kind of frustration that I was facing every time I hit those roadblocks. And when I started using this method, everything changed for me. I felt inspired. I felt excited about composing. I felt like I couldn't wait for the next day. I went to sleep thinking and obsessing and contemplating how I was going to implement this in the next day's work. It was, I feel like, an important shift for me to grow as a composer, and that's what I want to offer you. That's one of the things that's going to be inside of this program, is how to actually leverage this conceptual framework of building your music in layers like a painting. It's extremely inspiring, and there's an infinite number of ways that you can do this. The scroll method that I showed is just one of those ways. The focus in the program is going to be on learning by doing, not just watching long videos by yourself. I really believe that if you want to be a successful composer, you need to fail all the time. Just like a violinist or a clarinetist or pianist thinks when they practice, they're making mistakes constantly. And they're adjusting and they're learning how to refine those things. And they're, maybe if they have some kind of practice journal, they're taking notes on what things they were facing that day so the next day they could address them. We have to think in the same way. We can't be so attached to our egos that we're afraid to fail. We can't be afraid of what others are going to think. Not every piece is going to be a masterpiece, and that's okay. Not every piece that Beethoven wrote is a masterpiece. Not every piece that Mozart wrote is a masterpiece. Maybe nowadays we think it must be because they're Beethoven and Mozart, but that's just a limiting belief, and it's a mental distortion. It's not really true. I'm sure that a ton of the pieces that Mozart or Beethoven or Haydn or Bach or Handel or whoever you like, I'm sure they felt like, that piece was okay. I'm going to move on to the next thing. And that's why their catalogs are so huge. So we have to detach ourselves from the results in order to actually grow. And having a method that's going to accelerate the compositional process and accelerate you through all of those different roadblocks is actually going to be a really powerful way to increase your productivity. And so that's why the focus is on learning by doing. I'll also guide you through online trainings like this one that I'm describing, where you build your music in layers like a painting, as well as weekly virtual collaboration calls. And so you can bring your music, bring different stages of the piece for feedback from me and from people in the community. Learning is going to happen inside this community at an exponentially faster rate than anywhere else, certainly faster than working on your own. It's going to be like hanging out with friends, but with real musical results. It'll help you to find your music family who values your music both inside and outside of the studio. These are going to be people who are going to support you and who are going to give you the affirmation that you need to feel like you're on the right track. And we're going to validate and embrace your style to encourage your growth. Because I speak from experience. I've been in situations where composers will, very, very well-known and respected composers will discourage the way that you're writing because they don't see the point in it. And so they can't empathize with the way that you write and your creative values and your creative tastes. They can only see what they think is what should be, and anything other than that is not valuable. And I don't have that kind of dogmatic worldview as a composer. I really think everyone should be free to explore whatever they want to explore and whatever genre, style, or context musically they want to do it. Even if that means writing in multiple kinds of styles. Why do we have to limit ourselves to just writing in one particular way? If we look at visual artists, like even take Picasso, he experimented in a lot of different styles. Yes, he has his blue period. Yes, he has the Cubist paintings. Yes, he has all of these other different things, but he wasn't restricted by them. They were just things he was exploring at the time. And so that's how you actually grow as an artist, is by just exploring things that interest you. And the only way to do that is by actually doing, right? That's how you would grow in this community. You would grow by learning to build your music in layers. You would learn by doing. You would learn in these collaboration calls as well as the online trainings. You would learn from the people in the group who will become hopefully your friends. You will learn by feeling affirmed in your style, and so you will be more confident and comfortable with your compositional and creative voice. So just a little bit more about this community. We will have these weekly 2-hour masterclasses. So when others learn, you learn too. There's this study from Carnegie Mellon University about the benefits of group work. And so when properly structured, group projects or group work can reinforce skills that are relevant to both group and individual work. One of the things that I liked in this list was breaking complex tasks into parts and steps. So composing is a very, very complex task. And so if you have other people working with you to solve problems or to suggest maybe you should try this approach, or maybe you should add a little bit of contrast here, maybe this part should be longer, maybe this one shorter, and that helps you to sort of figure out ways around blocks that you may be facing. Another thing that I like is refining understanding through discussion and explanation. This is something that will happen organically within these weekly collaboration calls. You'll give and receive feedback on performance. So maybe someone's facing a problem that you yourself have already faced. Maybe you can say, look, I think that what you can do in this particular situation is this. And the same will happen for you. They may offer something that they faced that you have not yet figured out how to solve. And so all of these different things happen in a group setting, which would not happen in one-on-one lessons. That's not the kind of thing that I ever experienced in one-on-one lessons throughout my musical studies. And one of my favorite things about working in groups is what I've highlighted here, challenging assumptions. This happens a lot in the studio meetings that I already have with the members of the Sound Painter Studio. Challenging assumptions is super important for composers because sometimes things come up that you don't even realize were assumptions, but that they are actually influencing the way that you think about your music. So for example, maybe you think that you have to write super virtuosically all the time, or maybe you think that the piano part must be complex or interesting so that the performer will be enticed to play it, or maybe you think that string players always like to have X, Y, and Z in their parts. And so when you talk to other people and you expose those assumptions, the other people can help to sort of like challenge them and make you start to reassess how you should approach composition, and it will triangulate what would be a more optimal approach to writing those parts for piano, clarinet, violin, whatever the case may be. It might challenge your own assumptions about what you think you should be even writing, right? Because some people, as I said before, feel that they must write in a certain style because that's what was imposed on them. And so they assume that everyone thinks that that's the case. And that's not really the case. Or you may assume, oh, everyone thinks that I need to have this kind of level of understanding, or I need to go to a 4-year university in order to be able to be a composer. And you actually don't. So when you're inside a studio like that, like the one that I'm describing, like the Sound Painter Studio, you'll be able to challenge these assumptions and realize, I actually can do this. I actually am capable. When you're inside a studio like the Sound Painter Studio, you'll challenge any assumption that's a barrier creatively for you. One of the most interesting things is that even when faced in very difficult economic conditions or during a recession, people turn to education as a solution because they know it's the one thing that can be never taken away from them, right? Your car can be taken from you, your house can be taken from you, your belongings can be taken from you, but nobody can take what you know. In this article from Walden University, they talk about why people turn to education when facing a recession. Even during the pandemic, people were investing in their education. My wife went to Northwestern University for her master's during the pandemic because she knew that it would increase her economic opportunities, and it did. She landed a job immediately after finishing her master's. And so people are investing in their knowledge. At Northwestern, for example, the cost of tuition per year is about $63,468. That is an insane investment per year. So you can imagine that after 4 years of that, someone's going to be $250,000 in student loan debt or just have spent that amount of money, which is crazy, right? But people do it. Even if you get aid, it's still 28 grand a year. That's a lot of money. But look at this. Graduation rate is 94% because they are determined to make good on their investment, right? They want to actually succeed. So the graduation rate is exponentially higher because the investment is so high. So their emotional investment is extremely high. Even if you go to a more modest university, a state school like the University of New Mexico, that's where I got my undergraduate degree. I then went on to get my PhD from Northwestern. But when I first did my undergraduate studies, even in a state school, it's going to be over 10 grand per year. So after all said and done, if you do a 4-year degree, it's over $40,000. Even if you were to go to a community college, the average cost of community college in the US is $8,000. It's still a significant investment. Another thing is 24/7 support from the community on the school platform, including for myself. It's just an isolated sort of social platform where you can post things. This is where like I'll post all of the online trainings and music theory videos and all those kinds of things. And you can post questions in between meetings for feedback. You can post any kind of question that comes up when you're working on your music. It could be about notation. It can be about even like a music business question. It could be a music philosophy question. It can be just to share like something really interesting that you came across, like a resource or some performance that really struck you or resonated with you. And this is unheard of with one-on-one lessons, right? You would never be able to just reach out to your teacher in the middle of the week and say, hey, what do you think about this? Because you know that maybe that's going to impose on their time and there's really no obligation on their end to respond to you. And this is even more true in a university setting. So even if you were to go to university to get a degree in music composition, it's not like you could send your instructor an email at 3 a.m. and say, hey, what do you think about this? Whereas in this studio, you could. That's sort of the difference, right? It would be unheard of in one-on-one lessons, just because it's not that faculty in universities don't want to give that kind of 24/7 support. It's just that they can't. They physically just can't because they have all kinds of things that occupy their time. They're teaching. They have a bunch of different lessons because they have their own composition studios. They have composing that they need to do. They have families. They have faculty meetings. They have all these different things that are binding up their time. Not only that, but in the majority of cases, they're on 9-month contracts, right? So they're not really obligated to lend that kind of 24/7 support. This is a different case. In the Sound Painter Studio, you would get support whenever you need it. That's the goal. Growth, always. Everyone is aligned to the same goal. We're writing, we're sharing music, and we're seeking artistic fulfillment. So here's how it's going to work, and there are various stages of this. The first thing that we're going to do is unveil your North Star as a composer. I think it's really important to know why you compose and to just have that as your North Star. It's going to help to stay motivated and on track so that you continue to grow. You'll also learn to structure your compositional process in layers, like I described earlier. You'll share updates on your music at your own pace, and you will also get to collaborate with professional musicians to bring your music to life. So the members who are currently in the studio are working with me both as a composition mentor and as a cellist to bring a piece for cello solo to life. A couple of bonuses at no extra cost. There's going to be a Fundamentals of Music Theory course and a free crash course on how to compose for cello. This was specifically designed for the people who are writing for me, but I also wanted to just have it there as a resource for anyone who's interested in writing for cello. So that's available at no extra cost. By going through this program, you'll adopt an efficient compositional process that ensures you never face composer's block again. If you're a composer that's serious about taking your music to the next level and you're looking for a masterclass-like setting where you can grow as a musician and as a composer, then book a free call today so that we can talk about whether the Sound Painter Studio is right for you. You can follow the link that's there, or you can scan this QR code here. And I look forward to meeting you.